Joining the podcast is Auburn Mike Man and my cousin, Dalton Odom. What's going on, man? How was that beach trip?
What's up, Skylar? How's it going? The beach trip was great. It was me and a bunch of other cheerleaders, some current cheerleaders, and some people who just transitioned off the squad who just graduated. So it's kind of like our one of our last hurrahs as we start going our separate ways. So it was a good time.
How long do you guys have off before you got to be back doing stuff?
So I start practice on Wednesday. So tomorrow.
Wow, so it
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah.
it comes up quick.
It does come up quick. Yeah. We'll have about 2 to 3 practices a week. We have, I think, 12 Camp War Eagles, which is our incoming freshman orientation. So I'll have like 12 pep rallies to do throughout the summer. And then the appearances too at just places around the community. Those never stop. So it's a busy summer.
Well, man, I can attest to this a little bit working under Saban. You grew up an Auburn fan, and now that you've had the experience of being the Mike Man at Auburn, how surreal has that been for you?
It's been a dream come true. I first heard about the Mike Man when I was 13. When I was 13, that was in 2013. So obviously that was Auburn football was just miracle season, coming off of a year where we went 3-9 and nobody had any expectations for us. But then we go into the season, we beat Georgia, we beat Bama, go to the SEC championship game, make it to the national championship game and don't win, unfortunately. But during that year, I remember watching the Georgia game, and I'm a freshman in high school. I'm watching the game, and I see this guy who's dressed just like a cheerleader, but he's not with the other cheerleaders per se. He's up on this box, and he's jumping up and down, just acting like a fool and leading the student section and just hyping them up. And I had no idea what his title was, who he was, but I immediately in that moment was like, I want to do that. And so literally from that day forward, becoming the Mike Man had just become like my lifelong dream. You can ask my parents. I prayed about it every single day. I thought about it every single day. It almost became kind of consuming. And then I got down here to Auburn and I met some cheerleaders and started going to open gyms and stunting and doing other workouts with them and just fell in love with the sport of cheerleading. And then I tried out and became the Mike Man. And now here we are.
Well, you mentioned your role is different than the other 10 guys on the squad. You lead all the cheers on game day, which means during pregame, all 21 cheerleaders run out on the field, and you lead the entire stadium for about 3 minutes, and then you go to the student section and do a little cheer in front of them. How fun, yet how hectic is all that?
Dude, there's nothing like it. It's unreal because I think just in for those 3 minutes, there's 87,000 people looking at me, and it's my job to hype them up before the football team runs out. And so my first Saturday ever doing it, I ran out and then almost blacked out. Like I barely remember it. I remember looking up at the video board and seeing myself on the video board and immediately had to look away because I was like, oh gosh, that's me. But ran off and then looked at my coach and was like, did I do it? Did I do okay? Because I didn't remember how I did. I just completely blacked out. She's like, you did great. Like, congratulations, you did it. But it's insane. Those 3 minutes, I have to wear earplugs because of how loud it is right there in the middle of the field. And my microphone that I call the cheers into is delayed from the speakers on the video board. So whatever I'm actually saying is there's a 2-second delay. And so I get thrown off. And so I have to keep in those earplugs, and then with the crowd going crazy, it's extremely hectic. And then during the game itself, I'm doing multiple different jobs. So obviously I'm calling the cheers for the student section and keeping them engaged, but I'm also looking at the marching band and communicating whatever they're about to play to the cheerleaders. And so we have all these different hand signs and things that the drum major will signal me, and then I'll signal that down to the other 20 cheerleaders so they know what's about to be played. So you have that going on. And then obviously I have to know the sport of football decently well because I have to know what is an appropriate cheer to call and when it's not appropriate to call a certain cheer. So there's a lot going on.
Does that 2 second delay and then communicating with the marching band and all that stuff, does that kind of make you nervous out there? Like, oh man, I hope I don't, get off beat or whatever, off, timing.
Oh, for sure. And I've done it before, but if you're at a game and you watch me while I'm on the field, if you notice I'm tapping my thigh and I'm doing that to be able to keep me on pace with myself during a cheer because I can barely even hear myself when I'm calling it. And so I want to make sure that I'm staying on pace for how the cheer should traditionally sound and not speeding myself up. For the stand, when I'm up there leading the student section, there's no delay. And so it's fine. But I do have to make sure that it's very easy for me to just want to sit there and watch the game and get distracted that way. But I have a job to do. And so I have to keep watching the marching band. So sometimes I get a little distracted, but it's not too bad.
Is there any game in particular that sticks out in your mind that maybe you ran out there and you were just so amped up that you wanted to put on some football pads and go out there?
Penn State. And I think that whole week, that game had just been hyped up. And obviously Auburn didn't have the outcome that we would have wanted, but there had been rumors about the football team wearing orange jerseys, which had just hyped everybody up. And then Penn State traveled really well, and I got a chance to meet a lot of their fans, and they were all super nice. And there was just a buzz around town, so that was a lot of fun. But I think the one that would probably take just the icing on the cake for me so far, it would be Texas A&M this past year, because the town and the university really just completely rallied around Cadillac, and it Auburn football and game day felt like Auburn again once he took back over. And there was just a buzz in the air. And I knew it was going to be an intense game when it was sold out and both teams competing were 3-9. And so when I ran out there to do cheers for that game, it was electric. I mean, it was doing it underneath the lights. It was a night game. It was freezing cold. But I had the time of my life out there, and I'll never forget being out there in the field for that game for sure.
Do you guys get to interact with the other cheerleaders from other schools that come and stuff?
We do. So it's tradition in the SEC to host the visiting cheerleaders at halftime, and you'll eat together. So whenever we have like a visiting SEC team come, or any team come to play at Jordan Hare, at halftime, we always eat together. And so we do that. And then before the game, we always make a point to go over there and greet the visiting cheerleaders and just see if they have any questions about anything, about where they're going to be cheering, like where the bathrooms are, where the water is. So we just try and be as accommodating as possible. But I've met some really great people, made some great connections by doing that for sure.
Well, speaking of Texas A&M, there are several schools who have, people who have a job like yours with Texas A&M and their yell leaders, but there's only one mic man at Auburn. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, so I have a lot of friends who are Aggies who go to A&M, and I've been to A&M. I've been to Auburn games there twice, and I've had the opportunity to meet the yell leaders, and they are phenomenal men. They're great guys, and they do a good job at what they do. The main difference with them and what I do, so there are no cheerleaders at Texas A&M. There are just the yell leaders. At Auburn, there are 21 cheerleaders. So there's 20 couples, and then there's me, just the mic man who's leading all the cheers. So I'm the one guy instead of, I think there's 5 yell leaders, 4 or 5. I'm going to go with 5. So there's one guy, just me, leading the entire crowd instead of 5. And I have a microphone, and it's my sole job to get everybody amped up. And so it can be a lot of pressure. I don't really have anybody else to rely back on besides I do have the other 20 teammates of mine, but they don't have my job. I don't have 4 other guys to rely on. So nothing against what the yell leaders do at all. They do a great job, and I've had the opportunity to meet them, and they're great guys, but our jobs do differ a little bit.
There's one thing you were telling me about cheerleading at Auburn that I really like. You said that Auburn cheerleading is different than a lot of programs. Y'all are a support group for the athletic department, and y'all don't compete. And to be a cheerleader at Auburn, you have to be a full-time student for a year and then try out, which, kind of gives you the opportunity to fall in love with Auburn, get a feel for, how intense the academics can be, and then see why Auburn deserves, to be served. And you said your coach always says that, I want kids who want to cheer at Auburn, not just kids who want to cheer in college. I think that's, like you said, a perfect way of putting it. Kind of tell me more about that.
Yeah, so like you said, you have to be a full-time student at Auburn for a year before you can try out. So we don't have clinics in the spring for transfer students or for high school students who want to try out at Auburn. You can try out at the end of your freshman year and then so on until you graduate. And we don't have a set number for how many years you can cheer at Auburn. If you make it your first year, most people cheer for 3, but it just varies per person. But yeah, so we are just a support group for the athletic department, and we don't compete. That way we can solely focus on, just helping these other teams, hopefully through to victory, whether that's football, men and women's basketball, gymnastics. We started going to baseball and softball this past year. Hopefully baseball will host a regional and we'll be there this weekend. We also make appearances at soccer. We travel for the postseason with men and women's basketball as well. So it's just a constant grind. But yeah, like you said, my coach does say she wants kids who want to cheer at Auburn, not kids who want to cheer in college. And the reasoning why, so cheerleading, just like any other sport, you have kids coming out of high school who want to go compete, want to go somewhere that has a good tradition of winning. I think that's natural for any athlete and it's completely understandable. But with cheerleading's not under the NCAA. And so cheerleading rules kind of vary per conference and per school. I know that the SEC has certain rules for cheerleading. Auburn has certain rules for cheerleading. But a lot of schools, not just in the SEC, but across the country, the issue that they end up having with the teams that compete is they'll compete at UCA or NCAA nationals, and then those kids leave, or they just stop coming to practice, or they don't do anything. And so let's say you have a squad of 40 people, you might have 28 that come back to cheer the rest of your basketball season. And so at Auburn, you don't have to worry about competing. You have 21 people that the university knows that they can rely on from the beginning of the fall semester till the end of the spring semester. So that's one of the main reasons why we don't. We're also just a very traditional program. Our squad has competed one time. We competed back in the 90s. If you're interested, people can go look at it on YouTube. They didn't do too bad. But it's just not something that we do. And I also think that the majority of the people on our squad, arguably, I'd probably say all 21 of us, we don't have an interest in competing. It would take kind of the fun out of all of it for us. We all love Auburn. We all love representing our school. And if we had to compete, there'd be a lot of pressure on each of us. But we get to go out there and just support the teams here at the university and just have a good time while doing it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you why you guys don't compete. And is that kind of like an Auburn tradition that, this isn't just something that your coach does? This has always been the deal at Auburn that no, freshman cheerleaders have ever cheered at Auburn?
Yeah, that's just kind of how it's always been. And hasn't ever really been pushback to change it. And the Auburn cheerleading alumni, people who are currently on the squad, our coaching staff, we don't really feel a need to. We're all happy with where we're at and where the program's at. We're pretty content with just representing the university as a support group.
You mentioned Cadillac earlier. What were your thoughts on Cadillac? Did you want him to get the head job? And speaking of the head job, what do you think about Hugh Freeze?
So I love Cadillac. He's great. Little personal story really quick. I'm sure Cadillac doesn't even know who I am, but I had an appearance at an elementary school this past semester. Myself, some other cheerleaders, some members of our Tiger Paws dance team, and then some representatives from pretty much every um, team at Auburn got to go read at elementary schools. And I was at one of the schools to read, and Cadillac walked in, and I was like, oh, like he's just here to read to one of the classes. But he actually was dropping off his lunchbox for his son. His son had just forgot his lunchbox at their house. So it was just cool to like see just, somebody who you look up to in a just a human sense. But anyway, I thought he did a phenomenal job with what he was given at, I mean, we were looking for scraps at that point, as far as where I felt like our team was at that point in the season. And I thought he did a phenomenal job of rallying everybody together, not just the football players, but the fan base as well. And we all rallied behind him because he's one of us. He's an Auburn man. And so we all supported him. As far as the head coaching job goes, I I was open to it, but I had full faith in John Cohen and what he was going to do. And I am very glad that Cadillac is still on the coaching staff. I feel like that was vital that he had to be, whoever our next head coach was going to be. In my opinion, I thought Cadillac had to be an integral part of it. So I'm happy that he's still on our football staff. Coach Freeze, I can't say enough great things about him. I have some close family friends of mine who know him pretty well, and he's a phenomenal man. I see him at church every Sunday. We go to the same church here in Auburn. I think what he's been able to do with recruiting so far has been, I mean, nothing short of a miracle. It's been insane. I think the last time I checked, we have the number 2 recruiting class, or transfer recruiting class, excuse me, which is unreal considering where we were at. And so I'm very pleased with what he's been able to do so far.
I definitely agree that whoever the next head coach was, that they definitely should have kept Cadillac on the staff, and I'm glad they did that. But I'm not going to lie, I thought there for a second it was going to be Lane Kiffin. What would you have thought about Lane Kiffin as Auburn head coach?
Oh, I mean, I would have been thrilled with Lane as well. He's a fierce competitor, and everywhere he's gone, he's had winning seasons. I would have been happy with Lane, but at the end of the day, I'm very happy that we got Hugh Freeze.
Well, to wrap this up, what can we expect from this coming season? Are there any new exciting things going on?
As far as cheerleading goes, or just in general?
You can do either.
With cheerleading, let's see. Like I said, we're pretty traditional, so nothing insane. Um, I know there's a lot of people out there, especially like on Auburn Twitter and then on message boards, who really love to keep up with, uniforms and everything. There's a possibility Auburn cheerleading is getting a new uniform this year, which would be awesome. We have 14 uniforms, which is insane. Let's see. In general, I'm excited to see baseball in the regional coming up. I'm excited to see how they do in Hoover. We don't have a great track record in Hoover, and it always seems like it rains on the days we're supposed to play. And we play tonight, and so I hope that doesn't happen. Some of the other stuff, I'm really excited about women's basketball. I think that Coach Harris has done a great job and her staff out on the recruiting trail for our women's basketball program, and volleyball as well. Holy crap. Our volleyball team went to the postseason for the first time in forever. Last year was only the second time in history that they'd gone to the NCAA tournament, and they won the first round at the school that was hosting they beat the school that was hosting, excuse me, in the first round of the tournament. And so I think there's a lot of exciting stuff going down on the Plains, especially within athletics. So I'm excited to have this last year as Mike Man and just support the athletic department any way that I can.